Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Jesus Loves You. So, I just saw this pretty cool movie called DOLLY. It's a crazy horror movie. I would give it 3 out of 5 stars. Pretty wild, off the rails movie. Pretty violent. It had Sean William Scott, you know him from all those old 90s movies. And the main girl was Fabian Therese. And the coolest thing I would say about this movie is they filmed it like it was from the 1960s. It's really grainy. It's on film. It's not digital. There's like dirt on the film, if you know what I mean. There's spots in the shots, and it's kind of yellowish. It looks super old. I really liked that aspect of it. And there were other like artistic cinematography moves in there that I liked. Some imaginative things. The way they used the effects. If it wasn't for all that, I would probably have to give this a lower score. The story was kind of cool. Basically, it's a really messed up family, a really abusive dad. They have a house in the middle of the woods. It's a random, literally looks like a dollhouse in the middle of the woods. And you're like, why is that there? You know, the movie starts out with these two. They're a couple. Sean William Scott is about to propose to the girl. She kind of knows it because she found the ring in the bag. They have a daughter who she's going to be stepmother to. Oh, I don't want to be like my mom. I really love the kid, but I don't know if I'm ready to be a mom kind of thing. So they go, but she loves him. So should I say yes? Should I say no? She's talking to her friend on the phone, that kind of thing. And they do what you shouldn't do ever, but definitely not in a horror movie, which is the moral of the story. And I can sum up the entire movie, what we would learn from it, in a few words. Don't go hiking in the woods, right? Don't go into the woods. That's just the moral of the story. There's nothing good in there. You know, for me, I only go in the woods if I have to. You know, if I'm escaping the apocalypse or something, and, you know, I'm all prepared and stuff like that. But otherwise, for me, I don't go into the woods for fun. It's not fun to me. It just seems like a recipe for disaster. There's evil lurking in there, you know? We know this from cultures have been talking about this forever, all kinds of creatures in there. So they're walking through the woods on the path, and they just start seeing these dolls like nailed to the trees. It's so weird and awesome and creepy. And then there's this life-size human being, which is like a really big, you don't know if it's a guy or a girl, but you know, size-wise, you think it's a guy. But he's wearing a porcelain doll mask with one eye, you know, jinked out, and the other one like super big and super crazy creepy. And, you know, it was kind of unbelievable because you're like, well, why wouldn't you just, you're this close, why wouldn't you just, you know, grab the knife and kill them? But it's like, yeah, I'll just stab you in the back and then explore the house, because they, you know, he almost kills the guy, takes the girl in the house. You know, she'll just stab him on the shoulder and then go walking around. This is weird. Like, I'm like yelling at the screen. What are you, Dora the Explorer over here? What are you doing? Oh, I think I'll just explore the house. I got my handy dandy notebook. I'll take some notes. You know, Blue's Clues over here. What are you doing? Matter of fact, I'm in my defense lawyer mind. I'm like, dude, grab the knife, get out, kill him. Or her, I don't care what it is, and you'll get off on manslaughter. Then I thought, wait, no, you would get off on self-defense. You'd be innocent. Like, you're every right now to use deadly force to get out. You know? So, up until that point, it was good. Like I said, about 4 stars out of 5. But there was one scene where the doll person punches their hand through their father, who they had chained up. You know, she stupidly lets the father out. Trusts the guy. You look at him, you hear him, you just red flags all over the place. You don't unlock the creepy guy in the other room. He's like, oh, there's a key, find the key. And you think, oh, he's all nice helping her. And then one thing leads to another, and you're like, don't do it. Don't unlock the guy, man. Leave him there, call the cops, whatever. And what do you know? As soon as he unlocks, she's looking around, she sees a dead body, and then he grabs her, and he's about to kill her. And you find out that's the dolly's father. So the weirdness comes when she first gets in there and the dolly creature, you know, puts a pacifier in her mouth, puts her in a baby doll dress. You know, she peed herself because she was so scared. She ends up changing her like a baby on the kitchen table. It's a grown woman. You know, it's crazy like that. And then she like pukes. Anyway, there's a lot of grossness in there. But the dolly puts its arm and hand through the father to kill him. Like just puts his arm through the body. And they film it, you know, where the guys, you see his face like, oh, you know, and that part was so silly and it just knocks down points. You know what I mean? You lost points on it. It's just, there's no believability in that at all. You know, I understand a little supernatural factor in horror. You know, if you're watching a slasher or a serial killer film, and then they throw the supernatural elements in there, they don't give too much explanation, right? Especially for the killer. Like, there's some supernatural elements. Even in Terrifier movies, they did that. And also, Michael Myers had sort of a supernatural ability to dodge bullets and get hit by bullets and keep going and come back from the dead, you know, and that's cool. But I need some believability unless we're watching a fantasy film, and then, you know. So this was a slasher. You know, you guys know I always talk about like The Strangers and Scream. Most people, when they think of horror, they think of those movies. So what I mean to say is most people think of slasher films when they think of horror. I was thinking while watching this that horror genre is all about mental illness. I had that epiphany, and I already knew that horror is one of the genres of film that deals largely with mental illness. I don't see any other genre dealing with it so well. Some drama films. But it's almost like every horror movie. And now I realize, I'm thinking back, I think pretty much every horror movie ever created deals with the issue of mental illness in some way, shape, or form. Essentially, my realization is horror films are about mental illness. Wow, what an epiphany. It took me this many years. And that's probably one of the reasons I like it, right? I've studied psychology. I'm interested in abnormal psychology, etc. I'm interested in mental health. It's my field. I like movies when they get into the killer, when they get into the background, the childhood of the killer, into the mind of how they're so messed up, right? This Dolly figure wasn't just a cold-hearted killer with no feelings, right? That was one of the ways she got out. She figured out the mind of the killer and played with it, right? And she started playing like the child and saying, Mom, Mommy, and then the thing flipped out and became nice and wanted to take care of her, right? There was this motherly aspect. So you see a lot of humanity even in the killer, which happens a lot in horror films. I like that. You know, there's some perverted and twisted need that the killer is trying to get met, or some trauma. We believe that the mother was killed somehow. They don't really tell you how. And she's really upset, and the body has no head, and there's flies all around. That's actually how the movie starts, which is it's really good how they started out. The first scene, you're under the bed. You see the dolly walking in bow-legged. You know, her feet are like this. And then you see the flies all around, and she's rocking, and she has the body. And she has this shrine of dolls out in the woods. And biblically, that reminded me of idolatry. As soon as I saw all those dolls, it was like creepy. You get this darkness. Okay, anytime you see mannequins or statues, you're going to feel darkness. In the Bible, that's the second commandment. You shall not have, you shall not make, you shall not have for yourself, you shall not bow, yes. But it's also about not having these creepy statues, right? Anytime you have that stuff, and the more statues you have, the more darkness and just weird vibes, right? The vibe check is off on that situation. And it's interesting that it's one of the commandments. So not too much Christianity in this one, not too much redeeming values. However, you do have the humanity of the final girl. She does survive. You know she's the final girl right off the bat. I did anyway. At some point you think, wait, are they going to kill her off? And you're like, no, she's the one. There's only a few characters anyway, right? But you have that humanity. You're relating to her, unless you're like, depends where your psychology is, right? I'm not sure. Like, normal people probably, right? I think mostly relate to the victims and the survivors, and that's generally how horror is laid out. However, humanity is the same. All of us have the capacity to become the dolly creature. because of trauma, because of maladjustment, not knowing, and they're just maladjusted, right? Sometimes we think that, oh, how could somebody, because it's so off and it's so not what we're supposed to do. Yes, but if you could understand their story, you can see, oh my gosh, because they believe this, then that leads to this, right? It's just like mental illness, schizophrenia, mania, psychosis. You can understand. I was just watching a story, in fact, about this one serial killer. His name was Richard Chase, and I watched a movie called Rampage from 1987, directed by William Friedkin, who did The French Connection, which was one of my friend Richie's favorite movies, and also The Exorcist, right? So, such a slam dunk horror, one of the best known horror films. Not one of my favorites, The Exorcist. I think it's a little overrated. I understand it was what it was for the time, but for me it was just, it's good, but, I've seen way better films. And I like the campy stuff, sometimes better than the well-made stuff like The Exorcist. So, this serial killer was killing people and drinking their blood. They called him the Vampire of Sacramento, Richard Chase. And he just killed random people. Just walked into their house, killed children, women, whatever. And he drank their blood, and he played with the organs and all of this stuff. So you think, man, what is that? Just evil? Why would somebody do that? Some people don't even want to know. They're just like, lock them up forever. Okay, yeah, sure. Somebody like that probably should be locked up, potentially forever. Yes, if they're going to do it again. The question is, why would somebody do this? And then you learn what's going on. The guy had psychosis, and it was building for many, many years. He tried to get help. The system really failed him. His parents failed him. He had all this trauma, which probably caused, at least in part, the schizophrenia. Could be some biological aspect as well. And he, in his psychosis, in his mania, in his wrong belief, believed that he had blood poisoning. And it's an obsession that he couldn't get rid of. And somehow in his mind it came to the idea that if he drank somebody else's blood, he would get cured. So he started drinking animal blood first. It wasn't humans at first, but eventually it got to that. He was so wrapped up in his delusion, he so believed it, that when he was in jail, caught for the crimes, his defense lawyer said, I want to get you off on insanity. He said, I'm not insane. He says, I don't want the insane plea. I'm just going to tell the jury that I drank the blood because I have blood poisoning and I needed to be well. And they'll let me out because they'll understand. This is how twisted his mind was and how misunderstanding of the world it was. He was completely wrong, obviously. It was based on delusion. But he believed it, and that's why he was doing what he was doing. So similarly, in horror movies, if you understand the story behind the killer, you can often understand, oh my gosh, that's why they're doing it. It's not you're like, oh yeah, that makes it good, that makes it okay. No, but you just simply understand what's going on. And it's devastating a lot of times. It's heartbreaking, and you hear like, wow, this is how people are suffering in this world of sin. That's another thing that horror movies do. Biblically, it shows you the depth of this world of sin and what it does to people. And you can understand how people can get broken down, right, and harmed, and also potentially get better. You also have that revenge factor, so that was in there. So oftentimes, you're angry with the victim, right? The victim's being held there. All this bad stuff is happening to them. Their spouse is dead in the woods or whatever it is. They're trying to get back to the daughter, and you're like, you want them to win. You want them to get, and you're putting yourself in the position to some degree, to varying degrees. We do that. In this one, they were breaking the guy's leg and this and that. I was like, ooh, like I felt that. Some of those scenes, you're just like, you feel it. So the revenge scenes are cool because you get to live vicariously through that, right? And I was reading that in my horror book recently, that horror is cathartic. We watch these things, and in human psyche, we want to see these things projected, put ourselves there so we can live through it vicariously through the characters, through the film, so we don't have to do it ourselves. Hopefully none of us will have to go through any of this kind of even remotely close scenarios. But we like to see humanity triumphant, and that was a theme in the movie, which is also biblical, right? Good always triumphs over evil, and that's in pretty much every horror movie ever created. So, that was the movie. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, there wasn't too much Christianity in it. I might have missed something on that. And I'm sure there was symbolic stuff that I could have picked up on, but just wanted to check in real quick. Hope you guys are well. Jesus loves you. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep going. Love you guys. Peace.